Wonder of the Wasteland by Zane Grey, Chapter 25, Part 1. The November morning was keen and cold, and Adam and Jeannie were on their way to spend the day at Andreas Canyon. Adam carried a lunch and a gun and a book, and Jeannie seemed so exuberant with wonderful spirits that she could scarcely keep her little moccasin feet on the sand. Adam had an unconscious joy in the sight of her. A dim old Indian trail led up one of the slopes of Andreas Canyon, to which Adam called Jeannie's attention. "We'll climb this one someday when it comes time to take you away," said Adam. "It's a hard climb, but the shortest way out, and you'll get to see the desert from the top of old Wasteland. That will be worth all the climb." His words made Jeannie pensive. Of late, the girl had become more and more beyond Adam's comprehension, wistful and sad and dreamy by turns, and now like a bird, and again like a thundercloud, but mostly a dancing, singing creature, full of unutterable sweetness of life. Beyond the oasis, some distance up the canyon, was a dense growth of mesquite and other brush. It surrounded a sandy glade in which bubbled forth a crystal spring of hot water. The bottom was clean white sand and that boiled up in the center like shining bubbles. Indians in times past had laced stones around the pool. A small cottonwood tree on the west side of the glade had begun to change the green color of leaves to amber and gold. All around the glade, like a wild, untrimmed hedge, the green and brown mesquites stood up, hiding the gray desert, insulating this cool, sandy, beautiful spot, hiding it away from the stern hardness of outside. Jeannie had never been here. Quickly she lost her pensiveness and began to sing like a lark. She kicked one moccasin one way and the other in another direction. Straightway she was on the stones with her bare, slender brown feet in the water. "Ooh, it's hot," she cried ecstatically, "but oh, it's fine." And she dipped them back. "Jeannie, you stay here and amuse yourself," said Adam. "I'm going to climb. Maybe I'll be back soon, maybe not. You play and read and eat the lunch when you're hungry." "All right, Wani," she replied gaily, "but I should think you'd rather stay with me." Adam had to be alone. He needed to be high above the desert where he could look down. Another crisis in his transformation was painfully pending. The meeting with Dismukes had been of profound significance, and its effect was going to be far-reaching. He climbed up the zigzag, dim trail, rising till the canyon yawned beneath him, and the green thicket where he had left Jeannie was but a dot. Then the way led round the slope of the great foothill where he left the trail and climbed to the craggy summit. It was a round, bare peak of jagged bronze rocks, and from his height, half a mile above the desert, the outlook was magnificent. Beyond and above him, the gray walls and fringed peaks of San Jacinto towered, sculptured and grand against the azure blue. Finding a comfortable seat with a rest for his back, Adam faced the illimitable gulf of color and distance below. Always a height such as this, where, like a lonely eagle, he could command an unobstructed view, had been a charm. A strange delight of his desert years. Not wholly had love of climbing, or to see afar, or to feel alone, or to travel in beauty been accountable for this habit. Adam's first reward for this climbing, before he had settled himself to watch the desert, was the sight of a condor. Only rarely did Adam see this great and loneliest of lonely birds. King of the eagles and of the blue heights, never had Adam seen one close. A wild slate-colored bird, huge of build, with grisly neck and wonderful clean-cut head, cruelly beaked. Even as Adam looked, the condor pitched off the crag and spread his enormous wings. A few flaps of those wide wings, then he sailed out over the gulf and around, rising as he circled. When he started, he was below Adam. On the first lap of that circle, he rose even with Adam's position, and when he came round again, he sailed over Adam perhaps 50 feet. Adam thrilled at the sight. The condor was peering down with gleaming, dark, uncanny eyes. He saw Adam. His keen head and great crooked beak moved to and fro, and the sun shone on his gray-flecked breast. Every feather of his immense wings seemed to quiver in the air, and the tip of feathers were ragged and separate. He cut the air with a soft swish. Around he sailed, widening his circles, rising higher, with never a movement of his wings. That fact was assured by Adam's sharp sight, and it was so marvelous that it fascinated him. What power enabled the condor to rise without propelling himself? No wind stirred down there under the peaks, so he could not lift himself by its aid. He sailed aloft. He came down on one slope of his circle to rise up on the other, and always he went higher. How easily and how graceful. He was peering down for sight of prey in which to sink cruel beak and talons. Once he crossed the sun, and Adam saw his shadow on the gleaming rocks below. Then his circles widened across the deep canyon, high above the higher foothills, until he approached the lofty peak. Higher still, and here the winds of the heights caught him. How he breasted them, sailing on and up, soaring toward the blue. Adam watched the bird with strained eyes that hurt, but never tired. To watch him was one of the things Adam needed. On and ever upward soared the condor. His range had changed with the height. His speed had increased with the wind. His spirit had mounted as he climbed. The craggy gray peak might have harbored his nest and his mate, but he gave no sign. High over the lonely cold heights he soared. There, far above his domain, he circled level for a while and then swooped down like a falling star. Miles across the sky, to sail, to soar, to rise again. Away across the heavens he flew, wide-winged and free, king of the eagles and of the winds, lonely and grand in the blue. Never a movement of his wings. Higher he sailed, higher he soared, till he was a fading speck, till he was gone out of sight in his realm above. Gone, sighed Adam. He is gone, and for all I know, he may be a spirit of the wind. From his invisible abode in the heavens, he can see the sheep on the crags. He can see me here. He can see Jeannie below. He can see the rabbit at its burrow. Nature, life. Oh, what use to think? What use to torture myself over mystery I can never solve? I learned one great truth only to find it involved even greater mystery. Adam had realized the need of shocks, else the desert influence would insulate him forever in his physical life. The meeting with Dismukes had been one of those shocks. Why had Dismukes been compelled to come back to the desert? What was the lure of the silent places? How could men sacrifice friends, people, home, love, civilization for the solitude and loneliness of the wastelands? Where lay the infinite fascination in death and decay and desolation? Who could solve this secret? Like white living flames, Adam's thoughts leaped in his mind. These wanderers of the wastelands, like Dismukes and himself, were not laboring under fancy or blindness or ignorance or imagination or even delusion. They were certainly not actuated by a feeling for some nameless thing. The desert was a fact. The spell it cast was a fact. Also, it began to dawn upon Adam that nothing in civilization, among the glittering cities and moving people, in places or hovels, in wealth or poverty, in fame or ignominy, in any walk of worldly life, could cast a spell of enchantment, could swell women's hearts and claim men's souls like the desert. The secret, then, had to do with the powerful effect of the desert, that was to say, of lonely and desolate and wild places, upon the mind of human beings. Adam remembered how Dismukes had loved to travel alone. If he had any selfishness in his great heart, it had been to gloat over lonely places by himself. Even with Adam, he seldom shared those moments of watching and listening. Always some part of every day he would spend alone on a ridge, on a height, or out on the sage, communing with this strange affinity of the desert. Adam had known Dismukes, at the end of a hard day's travel, to walk a mile and climb to a ledge, there to do nothing at all but to watch and to listen. It was a habit. He did it without thinking. When Adam confronted him with the fact, he was surprised. On Adam's side, this strange faculty or obsession, whatever it was, it seemed very much more greatly marked. Dismukes had, or imagined he had, the need to seek gold. Adam had little to do but wander over the ways of the desert. And now Adam, stirred to his depths by the culminating fatal tragedy of Dismukes' life and a passionate determination to understand it, he delved into his mind and memory as never before to discover forgotten lessons and larger growths. But not yet in his pondering did they prove to him why every day of his desert life, and particularly in the last few years, had he gone to this or that lonely spot for no reason at all, except that it gave him strange, vague happiness. Here was an astounding fact. He could have seen the same beauty, color, grandeur right from his camp. The hours he had passed thus were innumerable. What had he done? What had gone on in his mind during all these seemingly useless and wasted hours? Nothing. Merely nothing. It seemed to sit for hours, gazing out over the desert, gray-green, barren desert, to sit listening to the solitude, or the soft wind, or the seep of the sand, or perhaps the notes of a lonely bird. Nothing, because most of all that time he did not have in his mind the significance of his presence there. He really did not know he was there. This state of apparent unconsciousness had never been known to Adam at all until Magdalene Veery had given him intimation of it. He'd felt the thing but had never thought about it. But during these 3 years that he had lived near San Jacinto, it had grown until he gained a strange and fleeting power to exercise it voluntarily. Even this voluntary act seemed unthinking. Adam now, however, forced it to be a thinking act, and after many futile efforts, he at last, for a lightning flash of an instant, seemed to capture the state of his mind again. He recognized it because of an equally swift, vague joy that followed. Joy, he called it, for want of a better name. It wasn't really joy, but it was wildly sweet. No, not so, but perhaps sweetly wild. That emotion then was the secret of the idle hours, the secret of the doing nothing. If he could only grasp the secret of the nothing. Looked at with profound thought, this nothing resolved itself into exactly what it had seemed to his first vague, wandering thought, merely listening, watching, smelling, and feeling the desert. That was all. But now the sense of it began to assume tremendous importance. Adam believed himself to be not only on the track of the secret of the desert's influence, but also of life itself. End of chapter 25, part 1.